My name is Maribel, and I'm 27 years old. Standing in my childhood home's kitchen on December 20th, I stared at my mother in disbelief as she casually announced her plans. 5 children under 10 years old, all my cousin's kids would be dropped off at our house for the entire Christmas week while their parents vacationed in Cancun. And guess who was expected to play unpaid nanny? The fury that rose in my chest was nothing compared to what happened next. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, let me ask where you're watching from today. Are you dealing with family drama this holiday season too? Hit that like button if you've ever been volunteered for something without your permission, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens when family expectations go way too far. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I turned the tables on this manipulation. Now, let's get into the shocking details of how my own mother tried to trap me into free childcare and the explosive consequences that followed. I need to give you some context about why this request was so outrageous. I work as a marketing manager at a tech startup in the city, and if you know anything about startup culture, you know the hours are brutal. I've been putting in 60-hour weeks for the past year, managing multiple campaigns, dealing with demanding clients, and basically living on coffee and determination. This Christmas vacation was my first real break in 2 years. I'm talking about the kind of burnout where you fall asleep at red lights and forget what day it is. My doctor had actually ordered me to take time off after I started getting stress-induced migraines that would leave me bedridden for days. I live in my own apartment about an hour from my parents' house, and I'd specifically come home for Christmas to rest and reconnect with my family. Throughout my life, I've always been the responsible daughter, the one who helps out without being asked, the one who shows up when things get tough. But this time, I desperately needed to be the one being taken care of, not the caretaker. The announcement came while my mother, Diane, was decorating Christmas cookies, acting like she was discussing the weather. She didn't ask if I could help or if I was available. She simply informed me that Ashley, Brandon, and Melissa's kids would be staying with us for 8 days, starting December 22nd. The way she said it, you'd think we'd already discussed and agreed to this months ago. Her exact words were, "Oh, by the way, your cousins are dropping off their little ones on Thursday before their flight. I told them you'd be happy to help watch them while they finally get a much-needed vacation." I stood there holding a half-frosted snowman cookie, trying to process what she'd just said. Wait, what? When did this happen? Why wasn't I consulted about this? My mother didn't even look up from her intricate frosting work. "Oh, honey, they asked months ago, and I knew you wouldn't mind. You're so good with children, and it's not like you have kids of your own to worry about during the holidays." That comment stung more than I'd like to admit. I'm 27, focused on my career, and happy with my life choices, but my mother never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was childless. She continued, "Besides, they're family. We help family. That's what we do." She said this while adding silver pearls to a Christmas tree cookie, as if enslaving me for a week of unpaid childcare was as simple as decorating baked goods. Mom, I'm exhausted. I took this vacation to rest. I've been having health issues from overwork. I tried to keep my voice calm, but I could feel my hands shaking. She finally looked up, giving me that dismissive look I knew too well. "Oh, Maribel, you're being dramatic. They're just children. How hard can it be? You young people are always complaining about being tired. When I was your age, I was raising 3 kids and working full-time." My father, Robert, sat at the kitchen table reading his newspaper like he was studying for an exam. This was typical. In any conflict with my mother, he became selectively deaf and blind. He wouldn't take sides, which effectively meant he always took hers through his silence. "Dad, don't you think Mom should have asked me first?" I tried to bring him into the conversation. He rustled his newspaper and muttered something about not getting involved in women's discussions. I wanted to scream. This wasn't a women's discussion. This was about my life and my time being volunteered without my consent. The real betrayal started to unfold when I pressed for more details. "So, when exactly did they ask you about this?" I questioned, my voice getting sharper. My mother's hands paused for just a second over her cookies. "Oh, back in September. They were planning their anniversary trip and needed someone reliable." September. 3 months ago. She'd known about this for 3 months and was just telling me now 5 days before the kids arrived. "And you just decided I would do it without asking me." The anger was building in my chest like a pressure cooker. She waved her frosting bag dismissively. Well, what else would you be doing sitting around the house? At least this way you'll be useful. Useful. Like I was a piece of furniture to be utilized at her convenience. Then came the moment that made everything crystal clear. I pulled out my phone and called my cousin Ashley. Hey, Ashley, Mom just told me about the kids staying here. Can we talk about the details? There was a pause on the other end. Oh, Maribel. Your mom said you were so excited to spend quality time with the kids. She said you volunteered months ago and couldn't wait. We were so grateful when she said you insisted on doing it for free as a Christmas gift to us. My blood ran cold. She said I insisted on doing it for free. I repeated slowly, making eye contact with my mother, who suddenly became very interested in her cookie decorating. Well, yeah, Ashley continued, oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. Though we did give your mom $500 just to cover any expenses for food or activities for the kids. She said she'd pass it along to you. I ended the call and turned to face my mother. $500, Mom. Where's the $500 they gave you for me to use for the kids? She didn't even have the decency to look guilty. Oh, that I used it for the Christmas dinner groceries. We're feeding the whole family, after all. She'd taken money meant for me and spent it already, assuming I'd never find out. But the deception went even deeper. I called Brandon next, then Melissa. Each conversation revealed more lies. My mother had told them all that I was thrilled that I'd been begging for the chance to bond with their children, that I'd specifically requested they take a vacation so I could have this special time with my nieces and nephews. She'd painted me as some kind of child-obsessed aunt who lived for these opportunities. Melissa even said, "Your mom mentioned you've been feeling lonely and purposeless lately, and that watching the kids would give you something meaningful to do during the holidays." Lonely and purposeless. I was a successful marketing manager with a full life, friends, and interests. But in my mother's narrative, I was just a sad single woman who needed children to feel complete. The scope of her manipulation was breathtaking. She'd been planning this for months, crafting elaborate lies about my enthusiasm, pocketing money meant for me, and presenting it all as a done deal. When I confronted her with all this information, she just shrugged. I knew if I asked, you'd make excuses about being tired or busy. This way, everyone's happy. Your cousins get their vacation, the kids get to spend time with their aunt, and you get to do something meaningful instead of moping around the house. Moping around the house. That's what she called my desperate need for rest and recovery from burnout. I looked at my father again, hoping for some support, but he had retreated even further behind his newspaper fortress. The betrayal wasn't just the lies or the stolen money or the volunteered time. It was the complete dismissal of my needs, my health, and my autonomy as an adult. In my mother's world, I wasn't a person with my own life and challenges. I was just a resource to be deployed as she saw fit. 3 days later, the chaos began. My cousins arrived at our house like a tornado of designer luggage and entitled attitudes. Ashley pulled up first in her Range Rover, practically throwing her son Tyler's backpack at me before launching into a rapid-fire list of instructions. Tyler takes his ADHD medication at exactly 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. He's allergic to red dye number 40, but only sometimes, so just watch for hives. He doesn't eat vegetables unless they're hidden in something else. He needs exactly 9 hours of sleep or he gets destructive. Oh, and he's been having some anger issues lately, but I'm sure he'll be fine with you. Before I could process any of this, Brandon and his wife Karen arrived with Emma and Sophia. Karen, who I'd maybe spoken to 5 times in my life, handed me a 3-page typed document. These are the girls' schedules, dietary restrictions approved, TV shows, and emergency contacts. Emma is going through a phase where she thinks she's a cat, so just go with it. Sophia has been having nightmares about monsters in closets, so don't let her see any scary commercials. They need to video call us every night at exactly 7 p.m. Melissa came last with 4-year-old Jackson and baby Lily. She looked frazzled already, shoving a diaper bag the size of a small country into my arms. Lily's teething and hasn't been sleeping well. Jackson just learned the word no and uses it for everything. He's also in a hitting phase, but we're doing gentle parenting so no timeouts or consequences. Just redirect his energy. She air-quoted, redirect his energy, like it was some magic spell I was supposed to know. The cousins stood in my parents' foyer checking their phones and discussing their resort amenities, while their children began exploring the house like tiny, destructive investigators. Tyler immediately found and started playing with my father's vintage record player. Emma was meowing at the top of her lungs while Sophia opened every closet door looking for monsters to confront. Jackson had discovered the joy of slamming cabinet doors, and baby Lily was already crying. "Aren't you going to say goodbye to your kids?" I asked, incredulous at how quickly they were moving toward the door. Ashley barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, it's better if we just go. Quick like a Band-Aid. They'll be fine once we're gone." Brandon was already loading their luggage back into cars for the airport run. "You've got this Maribel. Think of it as practice for when you have your own kids someday." There it was again, that assumption that my life was just a rehearsal for eventual motherhood. Karen added, "Must be nice to have all this free time during the holidays. We never get a break from parenting." The irony of saying this while literally abandoning their children for a week of margaritas and beach time was apparently lost on them. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving me standing in the doorway with 5 children and a growing sense of doom. My mother appeared behind me, patting my shoulder. "See, that wasn't so hard. Now I have my church ladies coming over for cookie exchange in an hour, so maybe take the children upstairs." That's when the real nightmare began. Tyler, freed from parental supervision, transformed into a 9-year-old tornado. Within the first hour, he had broken my laptop by using it as a skateboard, claiming he saw someone do it on YouTube. When I tried to explain why this was wrong, he screamed that I wasn't his real mom and he didn't have to listen to me. The laptop that contained all my work files, my only connection to my job during vacation, was destroyed. Emma and Sophia, sensing the power vacuum, began what I can only describe as a systematic destruction of my childhood bedroom. They were looking for toys, but managed to empty every drawer, flip the mattress, and somehow get marker on the walls. When I tried to stop them, Emma hissed at me like an actual cat, while Sophia screamed that I was the monster in the closet. Jackson, true to his mother's warning, said no to everything. "Jackson, please don't throw your food." "No." "Jackson, let's put on your shoes." "No." "Jackson, please stop hitting your sister." "No." Each no was accompanied by whatever destructive action he could manage. He discovered that throwing toys at baby Lily's playpen made her scream louder, which apparently delighted him. Baby Lily herself was a special kind of challenge. The teething made her inconsolable unless she was being held and walked around constantly. The moment I put her down to deal with one of the other children's emergencies, she would scream with the lung capacity of an opera singer. My arms ached, my head was pounding, and we were only 3 hours into day 1. When my mother's church friends arrived, she presented me like some kind of circus act. "This is my daughter Maribel. She's watching all 5 of her cousins' children this week. Isn't she just wonderful?" The women cooed and praised while I stood there, baby Lily screaming in my arms, marker stains on my shirt from the girls, and Tyler's muddy footprints tracked across the carpet behind me. Mrs. Henderson, the pastor's wife, smiled that condescending smile I knew too well. "How lovely that you're helping out. Your mother tells us you don't have children of your own yet. This must be such good practice." I opened my mouth to respond, but my mother cut in quickly. "Maribel just loves children. She was so excited when she heard the kids were coming to stay." When I tried to correct this narrative to explain that I had been ambushed and was actually exhausted from work, my mother's face shifted to concern. "Oh dear, she's having one of her episodes. You know how stressed young people get these days. Can't handle a little responsibility without complaining." She stage whispered to her friends, "She's been having some mental health challenges. We're just trying to keep her busy and useful." Mental health challenges. The only challenge to my mental health was standing right in front of me, gaslighting me to her church circle. The women looked at me with that mixture of pity and judgment reserved for the family disappointment. One of them patted my arm. "Dear, maybe you should try prayer. It does wonders for those anxious thoughts." I wanted to scream that my anxious thoughts were completely rational responses to being manipulated and lied to, but Tyler chose that moment to crash into the china cabinet while chasing Jackson with what appeared to be my father's golf club. The sound of breaking dishes provided the perfect soundtrack to my breaking point. Tyler, stop!" I shouted, finally losing my patience. The church ladies gasped at my tone. My mother's face flushed with embarrassment. Maribel, control yourself. He's just a child playing. This is why I worry about your temperament. She turned to her friends, shaking her head sadly. She gets overwhelmed so easily. It's concerning. The gaslighting was masterful. Here I was managing 5 children I hadn't agreed to watch with no help, my belongings being destroyed, and somehow I was the problem. My raised voice in a moment of frustration was evidence of my instability, while her lying and manipulation were just normal family dynamics. The rest of that first day was a blur of disasters. Tyler found my purse and decided to make it rain with my cash. The girls got into my makeup and gave each other makeovers that looked like crime scenes. Jackson had a meltdown in the grocery store when I had to take all 5 kids to buy more diapers, and baby Lily had a diaper explosion that defied the laws of physics. When bedtime finally came, none of them would sleep. Tyler claimed his room was too quiet. The girls insisted on sleeping with every light on to keep monsters away. Jackson wanted to sleep in my bed, and Lily woke up every 45 minutes. I spent the night moving between rooms like some kind of sleep-deprived zombie trying to meet everyone's needs while my own body screamed for rest. The next morning, my mother found me passed out on the couch with Lily finally asleep on my chest. Instead of offering help or sympathy, she criticized the mess. Maribel, this house looks like a disaster. What will people think your father's golf buddies are coming by later? I stared at her in disbelief. Then maybe you could help watch the kids while I clean up. She laughed, actually laughed. Oh, honey, I raised my children already. These are your responsibility now. Besides, I have my book club this afternoon. You'll figure it out. Mothers always do. Except I wasn't their mother. I was their cousin who had been conscripted into service through lies and manipulation. When Tyler broke my laptop, I discovered my charger was also missing. He had used it for some kind of fort-building project. My work emails were piling up. My boss had tried calling twice, and I couldn't even access my files to do damage control. When I explained this to my mother, she waved it off. Work, work, work. That's all you young people think about. These children are more important than some silly emails. By day 3, I was at my breaking point. The house looked like it had been ransacked by professionals. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours straight since they arrived. My stress migraines were back with a vengeance, and I'd already spent over $200 of my own money on food diapers and replacement items for things they'd broken. When I finally confronted my mother about the money the cousins had given her, she acted offended. That money went to family expenses. Do you know how much it costs to host Christmas dinner? You should be grateful I'm not asking you to contribute more. The circular logic was dizzying. She'd volunteered me for a job, taken the payment for that job, and now expected gratitude for not charging me more. My father remained his usual helpful self, disappearing to his workshop whenever the children got too loud and returning only for meals. When I cornered him once, desperately seeking any ally in this madness, he just shrugged. Your mother knows best about these things. I don't get involved in childcare decisions. The fact that this wasn't about childcare but about basic respect and autonomy seemed to escape him entirely. Everything changed when my younger sister Grace arrived on day 4. I was sitting on the kitchen floor trying to feed Jackson while stopping Emma from painting Sophia with yogurt when Grace walked in. She took one look at the scene and her face went from confusion to fury in seconds. What the hell is going on here? Why do you have all the cousins' kids? I nearly cried with relief at having someone else see the insanity of the situation. Mom volunteered me to watch them while everyone goes to Cancun. She told them I insisted on doing it. Grace's expression darkened further. She tried that with me back in October. I told her absolutely not. I had finals coming up and there was no way I was playing babysitter for a week. The room seemed to spin. Wait, you knew about this in October. Grace sat down next to me, gently taking the spoon to help feed Jackson. Yeah, Mom called me all excited about how Ashley, Brandon, and Melissa needed childcare for their trip. She said it would be such a wonderful opportunity for family bonding. I shut it down immediately. Told her if they wanted childcare, they could hire a professional nanny. So she knew I was the backup plan. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture I didn't want to see. Grace nodded grimly. Oh, it's worse than that. She told me if I didn't do it, she'd have to ask you, and you were already so stressed from work. She actually tried to guilt me about your health, saying you needed a distraction from your career obsession. The manipulation was even deeper than I'd imagined. She'd tried to use me as leverage against Grace then. When that failed, she'd simply moved on to make me the target. Did she offer you money too? I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. Grace's guilty expression told me everything. She said if I agreed, she'd give me the $500 the cousins were paying. When I refused, she said she'd put it toward Christmas expenses instead. Grace, she told them I volunteered. She told them I insisted on doing it for free. My voice was shaking with rage and exhaustion. Grace's face went pale. That's exactly what she tried with me. She was already spinning the story about how I was desperate to spend time with the kids, how it would give my life meaning. I actually had to call Ashley myself to make it clear I wasn't available. Tyler chose that moment to run through the kitchen, wielding my hair straightener like a sword, chasing Sophia, who was shrieking about monsters. Grace watched them tear through and shook her head. This is insane. You look like you haven't slept in days. I laughed bitterly. Try 4 days. Lily's teething, Jackson has night terrors, and Tyler thinks bedtime is a suggestion. Grace stood up, pulling out her phone. This ends now. We're calling them back from their vacation. But I grabbed her hand. No, wait. I want to understand exactly how deep this goes first. There's something bigger happening here. Grace studied my face, then nodded slowly. You're right. Mom's always been manipulative, but this is next level even for her. We spent the next hour piecing together the full story, while the kids miraculously entertained themselves with a movie. Grace revealed that our mother had been setting me up as the family workhorse for years. Remember when Aunt Carol needed someone to plan her retirement party? Mom volunteered you while you were in the middle of finals senior year. Or when Cousin Jake needed help moving across country. Guess who got volunteered to drive the truck? Each memory was like a puzzle piece clicking into place. The pattern had always been there, but I'd been too close to see it. She always made it seem like I was helping family, like it was my idea or my duty. Grace nodded. And if you ever pushed back, you were selfish, ungrateful, not family-oriented enough. She's been conditioning you for years. But the current situation revealed something even more disturbing. Grace pulled up our mother's Facebook page on her phone. Look at this. Post after post showed my mother bragging about her successful daughters, with very different narratives for each of us. Grace was portrayed as the smart one studying to be a doctor following her dreams. I was portrayed as the dutiful one always available to help families successful enough to be financially stable, but not so busy that I couldn't drop everything when needed. She's been curating our images to the family for years, Grace said, scrolling through more posts. You're the one with money and time, according to her narrative. Look here, she's talking about your high-paying tech job and how you're finally learning what's really important in life by helping with family obligations. Then we found something that made my blood run cold. A private message thread between my mother and Aunt Linda, her sister. In it, my mother was discussing Maribel's financial situation and how I really should be helping more with family expenses since I don't have children of my own to support. She'd been telling relatives I was wealthy, that my tech job paid far more than it actually did, and that I had disposable income I was selfishly hoarding. She's been setting you up as the family bank, Grace said, her voice horrified. Look, she promised Cousin Rita you'd help with her wedding costs. And here she told Uncle Paul you might be able to loan him money for his business idea. The messages went back months, my mother carefully planting seeds about my supposed wealth and availability. I felt sick. No wonder everyone always seems to have their hand out when they see me at family events. She's been advertising me as an ATM. But it got worse. We found a group chat for planning the Cancun trip where my mother was actively involved in the discussions. She'd helped them choose the resort, pick the dates, and assured them repeatedly that childcare was handled. In one message from November, Ashley wrote, "Are you sure Maribel wants to do this? 5 kids is a lot." My mother's response was swift. "Oh, she's been begging me to arrange something like this. She feels so left out when everyone talks about their children. This will give her a chance to feel included in the parenting experience. She might even thank you for opening her eyes to what she's missing." The cruel genius of it was breathtaking. She'd weaponized my childless status, turned it into both a vulnerability and a selling point. To me, she said I had nothing better to do because I didn't have kids. To them, she said I desperately wanted the experience of having kids. Either way, I was the perfect victim. Grace and I sat in stunned silence until Tyler's scream from the living room broke the spell. He'd gotten gum in Emma's hair and she was trying to cut it out with craft scissors. As I rushed to prevent a hair disaster, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. At church, ladies are asking about you. Told them you're doing wonderfully with the children. Mrs. Patterson's daughter needs a babysitter for New Year's Eve. I said you'd probably be available. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not broke, but snapped into place like a bone being reset. The fog of a lifetime of manipulation cleared, and I saw everything with crystal clarity. This wasn't about Christmas or childcare or family helping family. This was about control, about my mother's need to direct everyone's lives according to her script with me, cast as the eternal supporting character in everyone else's story. I showed Grace the text. Her face went from angry to determined. That's it. We're not just solving this current problem. We're going to expose the whole thing. I looked at her exhausted but suddenly energized by the possibility of finally fighting back. What do you have in mind? Grace smiled, and for the first time in days, I felt hope. Remember how Mom always says family is everything. Let's show the family everything she's been doing. But first, we need backup, and I know exactly who to call. That's when she told me about Aunt Linda. Our mother's sister had been mysteriously absent from family events for the past 2 years, and now Grace knew why. Linda told me some things when I was refusing the babysitting job. She said Mom has been doing this for decades, even to her own siblings. She might have evidence we need. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. It was Aunt Linda. "Maribel, honey, I heard through the grapevine about what's happening. Your mother's neighbor posted a photo of you at the grocery store with all 5 kids looking like you were about to collapse. We need to talk." Her voice was warm but urgent, and I felt like I was hearing from an ally in a war I'd just realized I'd been fighting my whole life. "Aunt Linda, I'm drowning here. Mom lied to everyone, took their money, and dumped these kids on me." There was a long sigh on the other end. "Oh, sweetheart, I know. She did something similar to me 15 years ago. Cost me my job and nearly my marriage. I've been waiting for one of you girls to finally see through her act and be ready to hear the truth." In the background, I could hear Lily starting to fuss and Jackson declaring no to whatever Emma was trying to get him to do. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel alone. Grace was here, Aunt Linda was reaching out, and somewhere in my phone was evidence of years of lies and manipulation. Can you come over?" I asked Aunt Linda. "Grace is here, and we're putting together everything we know." There was no hesitation. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. And Maribel, I'm bringing receipts. Literal receipts. Your mother has no idea I kept everything." As I hung up, I looked at Grace. She was already making notes on her phone, documenting everything we'd discovered. "We're really doing this?" I asked. She looked up, her eyes fierce. "We're really doing this. It's time Mom learned that her daughters aren't puppets, and the family deserves to know who's been pulling their strings." Tyler ran by carrying what looked suspiciously like my father's expensive golf club, but for once I didn't chase after him. I had bigger fish to fry, and for the first time in my life, I was ready to light the fire. Aunt Linda arrived like a force of nature, carrying 2 banker's boxes and a laptop bag. She took one look at the chaos with Jackson finger painting on the coffee table and Emma meowing while perched on top of the refrigerator and shook her head. Diane really outdid herself this time. 5 kids, I only got stuck with 3 when she pulled this on me. We barricaded ourselves in my father's study while Grace corralled the kids with the promise of unlimited screen time and snacks. Aunt Linda spread out her documents like a general planning a campaign. "I started keeping records after the Thanksgiving incident of 2008. Your mother volunteered me to host 30 people with 2 days' notice while I was recovering from surgery. When I couldn't do it, she told everyone I was having a mental breakdown." The papers told a story of systematic manipulation spanning decades. There were emails where my mother promised various relatives Linda's help without asking. Screenshots of Facebook posts where she painted Linda as unstable when she refused. Even text messages where my mother tried to guilt Linda about family money, suggesting she owed the family for past support that never actually existed. But here's the smoking gun, Linda said, pulling out her laptop. I recorded our last phone conversation 2 years ago when she tried to get me to take out a loan for Cousin Maria's wedding. She didn't know I was recording, and the things she said about you girls would break your heart. She played the recording, and my mother's voice filled the room, twisted with a casual cruelty I'd never heard before. Linda, you need to stop being so selfish. Just because your life is a mess doesn't mean you can't help family. Look at Maribel. She never says no because I raised her right. She knows her place. Grace still has some growing up to do, but Maribel understands that some of us were meant to be givers. It's her purpose. My purpose. Like I was some kind of family appliance designed to dispense money and free labor. Grace grabbed my hand as we listened to our mother continue. Honestly, it's better that Maribel doesn't have children. Can you imagine? She can barely handle her little job. At least this way she can be useful to the family members who actually contributed to the next generation. The recording went on, my mother outlining her plans to ensure I remained the family servant, how she deliberately undermined any relationship that might lead to me having my own family obligations, how she'd convinced relatives I was wealthy but selfish, so I'd feel guilty and give more. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation, and it was all there in her own voice. I stopped speaking to her after this, Linda said quietly. But I knew eventually one of you would need this evidence. She's been doing this since we were children. Our mother did it to her, and instead of breaking the cycle, she perfected it. We spent the next 2 hours building our case. Grace had been screenshotting social media posts I had all the text messages from the past week, and Linda provided years of documentation. We created a shared folder with everything organized by date and type of manipulation. It was overwhelming seeing it all laid out, the pattern so clear it was almost artistic in its malevolence. Then came the hardest part, deciding how to expose it. We could just send everything to all the relatives, Grace suggested. Mass email bomb and let them sort it out. But Linda shook her head. Your mother is too good at spinning narratives. She'll claim it's all out of context, that we're ganging up on her. We need them to see it happening in real time. That's when I had an idea. The family WhatsApp group, the one Mom created for Christmas planning. Everyone's in it, even the cousins in Cancun. Grace's eyes lit up. And Mom doesn't know we can see the message history from before we were added. We pulled up the chat, and sure enough, there were months of messages showing my mother orchestrating the whole childcare situation. Oh, look, I said, pointing to a message from October. She's literally telling Ashley that I mentioned wanting to babysit over the holidays. That was before she even asked Grace. Linda nodded approvingly. This is perfect. We can show the timeline of lies in real time. But we need to be strategic about how we reveal it. We decided on a 3-phase approach. First, I would post a simple message in the family chat asking for clarification about the childcare arrangement, playing dumb about the details. Then, as my mother inevitably tried to spin the story, we'd start dropping receipts that contradicted her version. Finally, Linda would enter the chat with her evidence of the historical pattern. I typed the first message with shaking fingers. Hi everyone, quick question. I'm a bit confused about the arrangement with the kids. Mom mentioned there was some miscommunication about payment and scheduling. Can someone clarify what was originally discussed? Just want to make sure I understand correctly. The response was immediate. Ashley typed back from Cancun. What do you mean your mom said you volunteered months ago and refused any payment? Is everything okay? Brandon added, yeah, she told us you specifically requested to watch all the kids together for the bonding experience. Before my mother could respond, I continued, that's odd. I actually only found out about this arrangement on December 20th. Mom, didn't you tell me the cousins asked in September? The typing indicators showed my mother was crafting a response, but I didn't give her time. I posted a screenshot of her telling me about it while decorating cookies with the date clearly visible. The chat exploded. Melissa wrote, wait December 20th. We booked our flights in October based on Diane's assurance that childcare was arranged. My mother finally responded, there must be some confusion. Maribel has been having some memory issues with her stress. She probably just forgot our earlier conversations. That was Grace's cue. She joined the chat with screenshots of our mother's attempts to guilt her into babysitting in October, including messages where my mother explicitly stated she hadn't asked me yet, but was sure I'd agree. Mom, here are your messages to me from October 10th, saying you still needed to convince Maribel. How could she have volunteered before you asked her? The typing indicators from various family members were going crazy. My mother tried damage control. Girls, this is a family chat, not a place to air grievances. We can discuss this privately. But the dam had broken. Uncle Paul chimed in. Diane, you told me Maribel was wealthy and could afford to help with my business loan. But if she's doing free childcare, how is that fair? Cousin Rita added, you promised Maribel would help pay for my wedding venue. Did you even ask her? The questions kept coming, and with each one, Grace and I posted receipts. Screenshots of my mother promising my money, my time, my labor, all without my knowledge or consent. Then Linda entered the chat like an avenging angel. Since we're clarifying things, I'd like to share why I've been absent from family events for 2 years. She began posting her evidence methodically, starting with the emails and building to the recorded phone call. She uploaded the audio file with a trigger warning. This contains Diane discussing her daughters in disturbing ways. As family members listened to the recording, the chat went silent for a full 5 minutes. Then the messages started flooding in. Aunt Carol. Diane, is this really you? This is horrible. Uncle Michael. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You called Maribel an appliance. Even distant relatives who rarely participated were expressing shock and disgust. My mother made one last attempt. That recording is edited. This is a coordinated attack. They're trying to ruin Christmas. But it was too late. Ashley posted, we're coming back. This is insane. Maribel, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Brandon added, Mom's booking us on the next flight. We'll be there by tomorrow morning. The most surprising response came from my father. He posted in the chat for the first time ever. I've watched this happen for too long. Diane, what you've done to our daughters is wrong. I'm ashamed I stayed silent. Maribel and Grace. I'm sorry. The cousins arrived at 6 a.m. the next morning looking shell-shocked. They collected their children with profuse apologies and each handed me envelopes. This is the childcare money Mom took plus extra for damages and your trouble, Ashley said, surveying the destroyed laptop in chaos. We're also paying for whatever the kids broke. But the real reckoning came when the extended family convened an emergency meeting that evening. My mother was forced to sit and listen as relative after relative shared their own stories of manipulation. Aunt Carol revealed how my mother had sabotaged her small business by promising orders from me that never materialized. Uncle Paul explained how my mother had convinced him I was a millionaire tech executive who was too selfish to help family, leading to years of resentment. The pattern was undeniable. My mother had spent decades creating false narratives about family members to manipulate situations to her advantage, always positioning herself as the loving matriarch, just trying to keep everyone together while secretly pulling strings to maintain control and power. When it was my mother's turn to speak, she tried tears first. I only wanted to help everyone. I thought if Maribel spent time with the children, she'd realize what she was missing. But the family wasn't buying it anymore. Grace stood up. You don't get to decide what anyone is missing. You don't get to volunteer our time, promise our money, or create fake versions of us to suit your needs. The meeting ended with concrete consequences. The family agreed my mother needed professional help before she'd be welcome at family gatherings. A new family chat was created without her where decisions would be made transparently. Most importantly, everyone agreed to verify any commitments directly with the person involved, never through my mother. As people were leaving, my grandmother, who had been silent throughout the meeting, approached me. I failed your mother, she said quietly. I did to her what she did to you, and I'm sorry it took this long for someone to break the pattern. You're braver than I ever was. My mother made one last attempt to manipulate the situation that night. She showed up at my apartment not with apologies, but with threats. You've destroyed this family, she hissed. When they realize how much I did to keep everyone connected, they'll come crawling back. And when that happens, don't expect forgiveness from me. I looked at her. really looked at her and saw not my mother, but a scared woman who had built her entire identity on controlling others. "I don't need your forgiveness, Mom. I need you to get help. Until you do, I can't have you in my life." The shock on her face was profound. I don't think anyone had ever set such a clear boundary with her before. She tried everything guilt tears rage, even faking chest pains. But I held firm, and eventually she left. Grace stayed with me that night, and we talked until dawn about growing up under that manipulation, how it had shaped us, and how we would move forward. The immediate aftermath was both liberating and challenging. I took the rest of my vacation to actually rest, turning off my phone and focusing on recovering from the burnout that had been exacerbated by the chaos of the past week. My cousins not only paid for all damages, but also insisted on paying for a professional cleaning service to restore my parents' house. The laptop was replaced with an upgraded model, and Ashley even threw in a spa day gift certificate with a note. "This doesn't make up for what happened, but please take care of yourself." Grace and I grew closer through the shared experience of confronting our mother's manipulation. We started having weekly dinners where we'd process our childhood through this new lens of understanding. So many things made sense now: why I always felt guilty for any personal success, why saying no felt like a moral failure, why I worked myself to exhaustion trying to prove my worth through usefulness to others. I started therapy in January, specifically seeking someone who specialized in family manipulation and emotional abuse. My therapist helped me understand that my workaholic tendencies were directly connected to my conditioning. I'd learned that my value came from what I could provide to others, never from just being myself. The 60-hour weeks weren't about career ambition. They were about proving I deserved to exist. My relationship with my father evolved slowly. He started individual therapy too, confronting his own complicity in enabling my mother's behavior. We had difficult conversations about how his silence had been its own form of betrayal. "I thought I was keeping the peace," he told me during one particularly emotional discussion. "I didn't realize I was choosing her peace over your well-being." It wasn't an excuse, but it was a start. The family dynamics shifted dramatically. Without my mother as the central information broker, relatives actually started talking to each other directly. Group texts were created for different branches of the family. Cousins who hadn't spoken in years reconnected. It turned out my mother had been playing many of us against each other, creating conflicts that kept her necessary as the mediator. Aunt Linda became a mentor figure, sharing her own healing journey and helping me navigate the complex emotions of grieving a mother who was still alive but no longer safe to have in my life. "It's okay to mourn the mother you deserved but didn't get," she told me. "That grief is real and valid." 6 months later, the extended family held a 4th of July reunion. It was the first major gathering without my mother orchestrating everything, and the difference was palpable. People actually relaxed, conversations were genuine rather than performed, and no one was voluntold to handle setup or cleanup. Tasks were distributed fairly, with everyone contributing according to their actual availability and willingness. My cousins approached me at that gathering with genuine remorse. They'd been doing their own work to understand how they'd participated in the exploitation, even unknowingly. Brandon admitted, "We knew deep down something was off about you suddenly volunteering, but it was easier to believe it than question it. We prioritized our vacation over your well-being, and that's on us." The professional impact of setting boundaries rippled through my work life, too. Once I stopped trying to prove my worth by being infinitely available and useful, I became more effective at my actual job. I delegated, better set realistic deadlines, and stopped volunteering for every extra project. Paradoxically, this led to a promotion. My boss commented that I seemed more confident and strategic, less scattered and reactive. My mother, meanwhile, went through her own journey, though I only heard about it secondhand. Initially, she tried to rally Flying Monkey's relatives who would pressure us to reconcile. But the family held firm, requiring her to show proof of therapy attendance before considering renewed contact. According to my father, she raged for weeks, then fell into depression and finally reluctantly began therapy. The therapist apparently had her work cut out for her. My mother had to confront not only her behavior, but the generational trauma that had created it. My grandmother's admission at the intervention had been accurate. My mother had learned these patterns from her own mother, who had learned them from hers. It was a chain of manipulation stretching back generations, each woman controlling and consuming her children because that's what had been done to her. I received a letter from my mother about 8 months after the Christmas incident. Not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement. She wrote about discovering in therapy how her own mother had volunteered her for family obligations, had given away her money, and possessions to relatives had told her she existed to serve others. She was beginning to understand that she'd perpetuated what had been done to her, thinking it was normal, even loving. It wasn't enough to rebuild our relationship, but it was a start toward her own healing. I wrote back briefly encouraging her to continue therapy and wishing her well on her journey. I wasn't ready for more, might never be ready for more, and that was okay. By the next Christmas, everything had changed. I spent the holiday with Grace and chosen family friends who had become my support system. We cooked together, exchanged thoughtful gifts, and most importantly, everyone was there by choice. No guilt, no obligation, no hidden agendas. Just people who genuinely wanted to be together. My cousins sent a group text asking if I'd be willing to babysit for a few hours while they attended a local event. They offered to pay my regular rate. Yes, I now had a rate for babysitting, understood when I said I was unavailable, and made other arrangements without drama. The normalcy of it was almost shocking after years of dysfunction. I'd like to say everything was perfect, that setting boundaries and exposing the truth led to a fairy tale ending. But real life is messier than that. Some family relationships never recovered. Some relatives still thought we'd been too harsh with my mother. There were awkward moments at family gatherings when her absence was palpable, like a phantom limb that still ached occasionally. But I was free from the exhausting performance of being endlessly useful, free from the guilt that had driven me to burnout, free to choose when and how I helped others from a place of genuine desire rather than obligation, free to value myself for who I was rather than what I could provide. The most profound change was in how I saw myself. I wasn't the family servant, the childless aunt who existed to support others' choices, the ATM for relatives' dreams, or the emotional dumping ground for family drama. I was Maribel, a whole person with my own dreams, needs, and boundaries. I was learning slowly that this was enough. Standing in my apartment the following Christmas, surrounded by friends who had become my chosen family, I thought about that horrible week with the 5 children. It had been a nightmare that pushed me to my breaking point, but it had also been the catalyst for breaking free from a lifetime of manipulation. My mother's greatest overreach had become her downfall, and my deepest crisis had become my liberation. The Christmas cookies we decorated that year were messy and imperfect, made with laughter and genuine joy rather than performance and obligation. As I bit into a lopsided snowman, I realized something profound. This was what family was supposed to feel like: chosen, cherished, and free. Final reflection. Looking back now, I understand that what happened that Christmas wasn't really about babysitting or holiday plans. It was about breaking a generational cycle of manipulation and control that had been disguised as love and family obligation. My mother had been both victim and perpetrator, trapped in patterns she'd inherited and perfected. But trauma isn't an excuse to traumatize others, and understanding isn't the same as accepting abuse. The courage to say no, to expose the truth, to set boundaries that people called selfish, but were actually self-preservation, that courage changed everything. It cost me the mother I'd always tried to please but could never satisfy. But it gave me something far more valuable: myself. To anyone watching who sees their own story in mine, who's been voluntold one too many times, who's been gaslit into believing their exhaustion is selfishness and their boundaries are betrayal, know this family isn't supposed to feel like a prison. Love isn't supposed to come with invoices. And you deserve to be valued for who you are, not just what you can do for others. The greatest gift you can give yourself isn't endless availability or infinite usefulness. It's the radical act of believing you matter just as you are. And sometimes the most important word you'll ever say is no. Thank you so much for watching my story. If you've experienced similar family dynamics, I'd love to hear how you found the courage to set boundaries. What was your breaking point? How did your family react? Drop a comment below and let's support each other because breaking these patterns is hard, but so necessary. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It really helps others who might need to hear this message find the video. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and finding your own voice. Please share this video with anyone who might be dealing with family manipulation or guilt. Sometimes seeing someone else's story helps us recognize our own patterns. Thank you for being here, for witnessing my journey, and for being part of this community. Remember, you deserve respect, peace, and the freedom to live your own life. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, no is a complete sentence.